Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Henry Confidential, and that is my partner there, Austin Pascal. Austin, when we were going through ideas for this show, um,
Hmm.
directors were one of the ones where I'm like, all right, let's go with some that have minimal, like smaller filmography, so we can talk about the big ones,
Hmm.
and then so we can really establish like the format and the structure of the show. And Del
Right.
Toro was one of those where it was like that fits the criteria, and luckily
Hmm.
for you, you hadn't seen a bunch of them in a long time, so it gave you an excuse to revisit them.
Yeah,
What was
yeah,
your
yeah.
first Del Toro movie that you'd ever seen, and also the first one you'd seen in theaters?
I think the first one I actually saw, of course, I don't know if I knew, it was Del Toro at the time because I was just watching movies. But I'm pretty sure I rented Mimic at some point from Blockbuster. So I know I saw it at some point. And then I think my first theatrical one had to have been Hellboy, the first Hellboy. It had to have
Okay.
been because I know it wasn't. I don't think it was Blade Two. I think I was too young still to see Blade Two in the theater, and yeah, and then it wasn't. Pan's Labyrinth came after Hellboy, so I'm pretty sure it was Hellboy. I'm like 99% sure. But yeah, those were kind of my earliest Del Toro, but I didn't really know. Who I was watching. I started hearing more about him when Pan's Labyrinth came out after Hellboy. I think in between Hellboy and Hellboy 2, and people started kind of really recognizing what he was all about, and he started kind of garnering sort of a cult following at that point. I mean, he's got more of a mainstream following at this point, but I definitely think it was a cult following for a while.
Yeah. For me, I'm pretty sure Pacific Rim is my first experience with him
Hmm.
because he's one of those directors where I didn't really grow up with the geek stuff. So Blade 1 and 2 I hadn't
Hmm.
seen until just a few years ago, and it was obviously I wouldn't have heard of Pan's Labyrinth until I got introduced to the world of the film community. So it was one of
Hmm.
those where it took me a minute to realize I even was watching a Del Toro movie. So once I got
Hmm.
introduced to the community, um, I fell in love with one of the movies, and then it made me want to go back and watch his other films, and then it helped
Hmm.
me gauge my opinion on him as a director based on that. So I guess my first one that I actually saw in theaters, I think, was Crimson Peak, because I'm pretty sure I didn't see Pacific Rim in theaters. I don't remember, to be
Okay.
honest, but I don't think I
Yeah.
saw it in theaters. So I'm pretty sure I saw Crimson Peak in theaters, and then obviously Shape of Water and Nightmare Alley. So those last three.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting because he's definitely a visual director. So experiencing his films on the big screen definitely
Hmm.
maximizes the experience. So it's one of those where it's like I totally get if people don't like fully vibe with Del Toro as a whole. And I'm definitely curious to see what your opinions are, since either a lot of these,
Yeah.
well, not a lot of these,
He's
but some of these are first time watches, and definitely a lot of rewatches.
Yeah, he's I wouldn't yeah, fan is a strong word. I'll try to put it like this. His movies itself a little hit or miss for me. It kind of depends on if I'm vibing with it or not. But I'll tell you one thing I've always appreciated about him and why I've always been interested in what he's doing is I appreciate his love of creatures, his creativity when it comes to creature designs and things like that, of practical effects when he can use them. His version of special effects, his creativity when it comes to that, his imagination really in
Right.
a lot of his movies. You can tell that his movies are his movies because he tries to use practical stuff. He comes up with designs that you don't see in any other movies. He has things that are kind of similar from movie to movie. He definitely has a style, a visual style. So yeah, you either kind of roll with it or you don't. I think most of the time I do. We'll talk about it, but as far as whether or not it kind of sticks the landing and sticks with me, we'll get into. But I do appreciate his love of both sci-fi and horror and monsters and all that kind of stuff. Like I can definitely appreciate his love of that because I don't know if you've seen like there's videos and pictures of like his house, but he's got creatures all over the place and it's like a
I don't
museum.
know.
He's a big fan of that sort of stuff. Like he's done little tours of his place and it's like a living museum. It's pretty cool. So he loves that stuff and I love that about him at least.
Yeah, and I guess one more thing I want to discuss, because you kind of trigger that memory. The
Mm-hmm.
concept of him doing the Hobbit movie before they
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
forced
he
you know
almost did. It was very very close. I mean,
So it's
very
it's one of
close.
those where it's like, in hindsight, especially after what we actually got from The Hobbit, which obviously didn't need to be a
Hmm.
trilogy. But after what we got, it's
Right.
one of those where it's like seeing all these movies and the concepts that Del Toro is able to construct, visually, his imagination, and using the worlds that he's able to build.
Mhm.
At worst case scenario, it would have been interesting, you know. So
Mhm.
I definitely wish we would have gotten that. Similar to like what people say about like Edgar Wright and Ant-Man. It's like, yeah, the Ant-Man we got was fine, but it's
Mhm.
like, imagine if Edgar Wright did that. That would have been a blast just because their
Right.
imagination and their
One of
creativity.
those what if movies, and he has another what if movie that he's never gotten around to that I'm still very interested in. If he ever does get to it, I don't think he will. But he was tapped at one point to do a love H.P. Lovecraft story that has never materialized, called In the Mountains of Madness. And because I really like Lovecraft adaptations and things, stuff like From Beyond and Reanimator and all that kind of stuff, in the Mouth of Madness, which John Carpenter did, which
Yeah.
kind of taps into some of that stuff. But there's another one called In the Mountain of Madness that Del Toro was gonna do at some point. And again, with his style of creature designs and his imagination, he's done things that are similar to sort of Cthulhu,
Yeah.
Lovecraft stuff in some of the Hellboy movies. So I would love to see his vision of a Lovecraft story. I think that would have been cool. Maybe it'll still happen at some point. I don't know, but I know it kind of fell through at that point. But I'd like to see it sometime. The dude's got the mind for it.
That reminds me. So just one last thing before we get to the ring, because you just triggered it
Mhm.
again. I wish I would. It's bad timing with the passing of Ivan Reitman, but I would love to see a Del
Mhm.
Toro's version of Ghostbusters, where it's not
Maybe,
just a
yeah.
family friendly version, or even if he just did his own ghost, type of
Sure.
movie where it was like an adventure though, where it's not just Crimson Peak, where it's a technical ghost story, his actual like
Right,
adventure
right.
style, and that would have been a blast because just like you said, the way he's able to like have passion behind it, and he's able to still create these worlds but also still have a lot of joy. A lot of these
Hmm.
movies have some funness to them. Like, they're not all dark and gritty like you would assume. if
No,
you
no, no.
if you've seen some of his dark stuff, you assume all of it's dark, but no, he's got range in terms of like emotion and comedy. It's not the funniest movies by any stretch of imagination, but there's enough
Hmm.
there that's like, all right, he's not devoid of
Hmm.
fun. So
Right.
let's go ahead and get into it. What is your first movie on your list?
So I only have uh, one movie that I actively dislike on this list and have a negative opinion of. I have a few that are okay, and then the other ones that range from good to pretty great. Although I will say this up front, I don't have any 5-star movies on
No
here.
bangers. Okay.
No bangers for me. Again, that just comes with Del Toro. There's some that come close, but they just aren't quite there for me. So starting at the bottom, the one I actively dislike is Crimson Peak. I do not like this movie. Crimson Peak is I had a negative reaction to it in the theaters. I rewatched it when it came out on digital. I still didn't like it. I think he is actively confused on what he wants to do in this movie. I don't know if I wish with Crimson Peak, Del Toro would have either stuck with a gothic romance period piece or done a full on horror ghost story, because he doesn't. I don't think he excels at either one in this movie, and I think it has a very confused tone. I think the performances are actually kind of bad in the movie, especially Jessica Chastain. I think Tom Hiddleston is trying his best, but it just doesn't work. Charlie Hunnam is just kind of there. Mia Wasikowska is trying her damnedest. Again, the only thing I really could say I enjoy about the movie is the production design. I like the look, especially of the red snow, all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
is cool. But it's a little like hit a nail on the head. Like, I get it. Like, I get it. All right. Like, I just think this one was one where he really went for something and just kind of threw a whole bunch of things up against the wall, and none of it stuck for me. Like, I actively don't like this movie, and it's the one it's the only one I have a true negative reaction to. Still going back to it.
Wow. All right. I would save my
Yeah,
opinions for a later date.
yeah.
My number 11.
I'm not alone in that. This is a very polarizing movie. I'm not alone in the Crimson Peak.
No, I've
Not,
had this conversation for
yeah,
years. Trust me.
yeah,
It,
yeah.
it, I was just hoping from you. I'm actually shocked just from you, just given the gothic
Yeah.
vibes. I thought you would have enjoyed that because it's not horror, but it's
It
horrific.
depends. I'm not big on like hammer horror, which I know he's kind of trying to tap into on this one. Hammer horror is real hit or miss for me. The only ones I've really liked that I've gone back to over the years is like the Christopher Lee Dracula movies, which I dig. But as far as just like doing hammer horror for the sake of that and just trying to hit those vibes, I know he's trying. But again, there's something about this movie that just drags. I think it's too long. It takes forever to kind of get to a finale. Yeah, again, it's the only one on the list I actively dislike and have a negative reaction to. So yeah, let's Crimson Peak.
All right, so we will go to my number 11, which is also the only one that I have a technical negative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's one of those where I think it's just not quite there yet, and it's confused in its overall message, and you can tell Del Toro was still mastering his craft or figuring out his footing. And that's his first Chronos.
I'm not far off. That's my next one, so we can talk about it.
Okay.
So
yeah.
yeah.
So like the concepts are there. I just feel like he's just trying to tell a story. Like you can tell he's trying to be true to himself with his Spanish heritage and the Spanish speaking language, but also like kind of like make it feel mainstream, but he hasn't quite like figured that out yet, like he does later. So it's just one of those where I feel like it's literally it's one of the few. He's one of the few directors who is like a master of his craft in terms of like filmmaking, who their first one feels like a first movie. You know what I mean? Like when we've done like Tarantino and Nolan and Edgar Wright and all their first ones, you're like, I don't know, that first one's a banger.
Pretty damn good. Yeah.
And this one, it just feels like a first one. It's one of those where it's like there's nothing really memorable about it. The creature stuff, it's there. You know what I mean? There's elements of it with the creepiness and everything with the the grandpa? Or I think that's what.
Yeah, it's like the older guy, and his bodyguard is Ron Perlman. Again, he's been working with him since the damn beginning, which is interesting.
Especially from this one to be the first one. That's so random.
Yeah, and he's so young, and yeah, I remember putting it on, and I was like, oh my god, that's pro, because I watched it for our '90s horror tier ranker that we did, because I had never seen it, and I mean it's got some interesting concepts, like you said, and ideas. I just think he doesn't quite stick it in this movie. He's still learning, and to me, it's not the most engaging movie. I think I got a little bored watching good chunks of this movie. Again, not to say it was like bad or poorly made or anything, but yeah, it might be one of his. It's definitely one of his weaker ones. But to be fair, it was his first. So he's still learning, and sometimes you hit a grand slam right out of the park, and sometimes you're still learning, and you can see that. I mean, but we saw that a little bit with Nolan and stuff like Following. You know what I mean? We talked about that, and it's what it kind of feels like. It feels like Nolan's Following, where he's playing around with some ideas. He's getting the concepts and things that he would take off later in his later movies.
Yeah, like obviously he knows he knows what he wants to do. He just doesn't know quite how to do it yet. So obviously he gets to that point. So since that was your number 10, I will also jump to my number 10. And my number 10 is his newest, Nightmare Alley. This is a movie that had just so much potential with star power, with the concept, I just feel like A, it's too long. B, it's like two different stories, like the first half and the second half. And I just feel like they don't like combine like in a way that like I want to watch. You know what I mean? Like and the ending, without getting spoiled, just because it's the only one that's like fresh. We'll be nice on that one.
Right.
But the ending, it literally, like, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I get the ending, and I get like where how it came full circle. But it's one of those where it's like I feel like you could have gotten that message across either A, quicker, or B, in a different way to really hammer home the point. Just because of where it ends connects to the beginning, but the beginning was so far removed because of the second half of the movie was its own thing. And I feel like it just didn't tie together. It's one of those, like when when you tie your shoe and you only do the one loop, it's technically tied, but it's going to keep coming undone just because it's not tight enough. And I feel like that's what this one was. Like the script's technically tight, like it knows what it's trying to say, but it's just not tight enough to come together as a whole. And it just, literally, take off running. It just, you can't do that. Bradley Cooper's great. Honestly, I was thinking for the first like 20 minutes of this movie, he wasn't going to say much. And then the second half, obviously, he gets going. The relationship between him and Blanchett is, it's fine. You know what I mean? Or not the relationship, like the
professional relationship sort of thing. Yeah.
Like it's fine. And then, I don't know. It's just one of those where it's like, I wanted more carnival stuff. Like if they just would have went there, but as soon as they got away from the carnival, it wasn't horror enough, you know what I mean? And it was not like creepy enough. It had elements to it, but not enough to like truly like leave that impact. So like I still gave it 3 stars just because it's beautiful, well acted. I don't have any technical complaints about it other than the fact that it's long and I'm probably not going to watch it very often. So like it's serviceable. It did its job of what it was trying to do, but I just didn't enjoy the movie as a whole. So yeah, it's a bummer. It's definitely a major letdown because I went in with high expectations. That also could be on me. I don't do that very often, but when I do, situations happen like this. So that was a bummer.
Yeah.
That's my number 10.
Okay, this might be one of those episodes, Henry. So strap in. This is one of our reasons we do this show. We'll see what happens. All right, but my number 9, because I'll talk about Nightmare a little bit later. My number 9 is the one I watched for the first time. For this one is The Devil's Backbone. So The Devil's Backbone. Again, I thought this was solid. I don't know if I loved it or anything, but I thought it was solid. Again, he's playing around with a lot of concepts that he would kind of expand on a little bit later. There's a lot of things I really liked about the movie. I liked how kind of it's almost like a one location movie, just kind of set in this little orphanage village kind of a thing. And just I like the concept that the centerpiece of this village is this bomb that dropped and never exploded. I kind of like it. It's just like it's almost like a little monument in the middle of the town, reminding everybody of, how kind of crazy the situation is in their country, during this Spanish Civil War. And, but yeah, I mean, I like the story about the kids and, and kind of exploring, what they've got going on. And, and kind of, it felt like The Others is what it felt like, that Nicole Kidman movie a little bit. Because it was like, there's a ghost, but it's not really what you think it is, and it's not really like an evil thing. It's
definitely not why you think it is.
Yeah, it's not why you think it is. Yeah, but I love the design. The design of the kid with like kind of the cracked skull with like the blood kind of just gradually just floating up in the air. Like I thought that was really creative. I really like that. Yeah, and some of the ghost scenes were creepy. Again, Del Toro seems to have this thing about monstrous adults in his movie. With the one guy, I forget his name, but
he's definitely using in his films.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, he's big on that theme. But again, I think there was things in this movie that he would do better in something like Pan's Labyrinth, which is why I think you could definitely see that in this movie, especially with again, I'm forgetting his name, but he but parallels between him and the captain character in Pan's Labyrinth. You know what I mean? So like you can see. Yeah, a little stuff like that. So again, good concepts, a good solid atmosphere. To me, it just felt a little slow. Like I think it could have been a little bit shorter. This movie could have used a 10-15 minute trim. For me personally,
it's interesting because it's not even 2 hours. It's just on that 2 hour mark.
Yeah, it's 1:47, but it still feels a little long. I after about an hour, I was kind of checking my watch, kind of seeing when it was gonna. Kind of really take a turn and start heading somewhere, and it does soon after that. But to me, it felt a little bit slow. But yeah, it's not bad. Again, if he had come out with this one first, I think it would have been an even more solid debut than Kronos, as far as like really seeing where his potential could lay. You know what I mean? So again, I thought the movie was okay. I thought it was solid, but I don't really see myself going back to this one a lot. It was all right.
Essentially, what I said about Nightmare Alley, where it's like it's one of those where it's like you can tell he knows what he was going for, but it just didn't work for you, and it overall just didn't have that appeal for the rewatch. So yeah, but
not bad. I don't have anything really bad to say about it. You know what I mean? It's just like it was kind of just there for me, but not in a horrible way. But he's done similar things better in other movies. Absolutely. That's kind of what it is. So,
my number 9. Here's the one that I have a feeling is gonna piss you off, and let's just end it off. Pacific Rim.
Here we go. This is gonna be one of those episodes.
Yeah. So Pacific Rim, I've given it multiple chances. It's one of those where. And I'm going to start off by saying I'm a Charlie Hunnam stan. Like you see my dog back there, Jax. He's named after Charlie Hunnam's character in Sons of Anarchy. So like that's my boy. And like I like I'm one of the few people who doesn't say like he's bad like performance wise. That's not the issue. Honestly, none of the performance, like they're kooky and they're wacky and they have they're definitely characteristics. But it just takes a while to get going. And my biggest pet peeve, and it's just you can't see much, and that's just like. It's just a bummer. Like you're literally gonna have these darker color, robots fight in the dark and in rain against each other. You know what I mean? It's just one of those where and the kaiju and it's like you that's the benefit of like the new Godzilla, how the Godzilla like lights up with that blue, so he's able to
Mm,
stand out. And granted, that's Godzilla's, part of his characteristics, so you have that. But you could have had
right.
something like with these characters that are like brand new. You know what I mean? You could just give them highlights that like stand out and like, and then their reflection can reflect off onto the kaiju. And it's just one of those where it's like, um, the main part. This is actually ironic that most times you hear like a negative and a critique about like a monster movie, it's like you don't care about the characters and I just want to see the kaijus, the monsters fighting. It's the opposite of this. I actually like the characters and the stories from the
Hmm.
characters, both Charlie Hunnam's backstory with his brother, everything with Idris Elba's
You
character.
just don't care about the monster stuff that much. It's like the
Exactly.
opposite.
That's
Right.
ironic
Right.
because that's what should be the
Hmm.
fun part. Like I would rather throw in the brand new Godzilla King of Monsters and Kong vs. Godzilla, and obviously Kong Skull Island just because it's its own thing. It's Kong, but it's not this. But you know
Hmm.
what I mean? I would rather watch those than Pacific Rim, even though Pacific Rim has the better characters, just because if which one am I gonna have more fun with? You know what I mean? Yeah, so it sets up the world pretty decently and it does a good job of like establishing like the concept of the world we're living in, but it just doesn't like I don't know, it's just missing. I don't know. It's just the fun. Like I really don't have the fun, and I don't know if it's because it's trying too hard to have that emotion,
Hmm.
or if it's just so patient and delicate and deliberate with its pacing and its storytelling to like unfold that it's like I don't want that from this type of movie. I honestly don't know what it is. Like like I don't have a negative review about it. 3 stars. Like it's serviceable. It does its job
Hmm.
technically. You know what I mean? I just don't love what it does. But I'm not. I don't think it's like bad. Like it's one of those movies. If you're familiar with Kurt Kolakowski, like this movie's in his top 100, and like that's
Hmm.
shocking because like on paper, other than like he likes like Godzilla, so that makes sense. But like this is not that type of movie because it actually has more character. I don't know. It's something. It's just I don't know. I'm missing something, and it's a bummer because like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love the concept and like I was really looking forward to go back to watch this. I'm like, all right, maybe I was wrong, and I went back and I'm like, no, that's just actually obviously back when I did half stars, this
Mhm.
was 3.5 star. I'm like, well, it's definitely going down to a 3. I'm not bumping up to a 4. Like it technically went down. So it's
No,
like,
it's one of those things where I know this movie ever since it came out has been kind of 50-50 as far as people either kind of digging it or not digging it, and people who love it kind of really love it, and the people who are kind of lukewarm on it like haven't really changed, and I get that. So yeah, that's fine. But yeah, no, I again it just hits me a little bit hard because like I do love kaiju, I do love Godzilla movies, and I'm
which
actually
will
like
rank
I
one
grew
day,
up.
all 180 of them.
Oh, right. Excuse me. There's only 29 of them. No, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. If you want to, I'll join you in that journey gladly. But that's on you. But yeah, we'll talk about Pacific Rim a little bit later because yeah, it's a little bit higher on mine. So
There we
that's
go.
fine.
What's your number 8?
My number 8 is Hellboy 2: The Golden Army.
Yeah, one of
Uh,
those episodes.
it's one of those episodes.
Oh
It's going to be
shit!
one of those. So this should make it's already making your rankings fun for later. So yeah, that's what I'm here to do. Yeah, I rewatched both Hellboy movies because I hadn't seen them honestly since the theater. Maybe I maybe had seen Hellboy 2 once at some point. But yeah, I like the idea and the character of Hellboy more than I like these movies. Um, I like Ron Perlman. I like Abe Sapien. I like all these elements, and yet for whatever reason, the whole is not the sum of its parts for me. Like I don't know why it just doesn't work as a movie for me. Like I just feel myself just kind of being like just watching these movies and it's just going from set piece to set piece to set piece, and I don't really care as much. Like I appreciate again the practical effects. Perlman's makeup is amazing. Abe Sapien stuff is great. Like I can appreciate all that stuff, and even Hellboy 2 when they go to the troll market or whatever they call it. The kind of underground market thing. Basically the Mos Eisley Cantina scene from Star Wars. And there's all these different monsters running around. Like it's cool. I can dig all that. Just this one for me is lower than even the first one because it digs into more fantasy, which I'm just not a fantasy guy. I
Yes,
don't think I like a lot of fantasy stuff.
I dig it.
Fantasy stuff is just not. It's just not really
So
my.
that Hobbit pitch I just talked about, definitely not your. You're like, nah, I'm
Yeah, I
good.
mean, again, and it's like I like. the Lord of the Rings movies, but I'm not one of these guys that watches them all the time.
Yeah.
The Hobbit movies are okay. Even stuff like people talk about like Willow or these other fantasy Princess Bride. I'm just not big on those movies either. So I think it's
English.
more of just a thing of fantasy for me. And these movies kind of lean into a lot of fantastical fantasy stuff. And Hellboy, especially Hellboy Two, especially does a little bit more of that with the Prince Nuada guy, whatever his name is, and it feels a little Lord of the Ringsy, especially in the prologue and kind of
Yeah.
where it ends up. So, yeah, it just, again, I like a lot of the pieces of it. I can watch it and appreciate the stuff that he's doing, some of the creativity in the movies and the performances, but it just doesn't, the movie just doesn't really vibe with me like a whole lot. So yeah, it's all right. It's passably entertaining, but it's just kind of okay for me.
Yeah.
So
One of those episodes. We'll
it's one of those.
we'll
Yeah,
get we will get into that, my guy.
yeah.
My number 8 is going to be a movie that at this point we're all into my 4 stars. So like, right now
Mm,
we're just kind of you know how I say it
building
every
up.
time. Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
saying I say it every time. You pick your grasp at straws when it comes to my ranking and my reason. So my number 8 is out of all of those, it's Devoid of Emotion, and it's a little less rewatchable. Not because it does anything wrong. Like it's one of those where I kind of want to savor the flavor, and but I will say going in the very first time I watched it, I was blown away. I was like, wow, I was not expecting to like this movie, let alone really like it. Mimic. This
Mm-hmm.
is a movie that it's a lot of fun. It knows exactly what it is. It really sets up the world. Like these researcher scientists that they're like going in and like it could have done a bunch of things that like movies like this, could have done. It's like we need to like study it, and then all of a sudden, like they're doing evil. They're not evil, like they're good people. They're just still
Right.
sciences at the end of the day. The creature effects, the practical effects with the actual bugs, like they're fantastic. Like it's got some brutal deaths. The kids are fun. They're like
Trying to always
yeah,
bargain and
yeah, they're like
make a
they
quick
want
buck.
like 10
Yeah,
bucks
off
for all for
everything.
all those bugs or
Yeah, yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
carcass seeds or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I said, and then the end on in like the trolley or whatever that is, the little
Mm-hmm.
train car, that's like really tense and like holy cow, like that's like this is
Mm-hmm.
honestly the only one that's like a true horror, and that scene is probably like the
Mm-hmm.
top horror scene for me for Del Toro's career, and it's like it was fantastic. Like that's the standout of
Mm-hmm.
like when I think of like in Spider-Man 2, the Doc Ock scene in the hospital, like that entire
In the
train car,
surgery room.
it
Yeah,
had
yeah,
vibes
yeah.
like that with it. Like it just really set the tone, and like with the broken leg, and I say this all the time about movies, like when worlds feel lived in, like this movie is dirty and sweaty and bloody and gross, but like
You
not
definitely
grotesque.
want to take you want to take a shower after watching this movie. It's very
Exactly.
grimy and dirty, and yeah, you just feel like everything's slimy and
Yeah.
gooey, and
And
yeah,
it's
it's
so
it's
so
it's
it's one of
got that
those where
going.
it's like I love that about it though, because it really like sets up that world, and it's like like I said, the only thing
Mm-hmm.
it's missing is like I didn't really care about the romance between the two, like not because
Mm-hmm.
it's bad or anything. It's just it's not meant to be
It's
like
just
yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's just two characters that are together, and X, Y, and Z. They're doing their jobs. So like it's just when I go back to it, like I've seen it twice. I don't remember their names. You know what I mean? I don't really care about
Mm-hmm.
the character stuff, and not because the character stuff's bad. It's just so in and out, one year out the other. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
they serviceable, but the creature stuff, that's what takes it over the edge, and that it's just a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And like this is a great example of why I know that I'm officially a horror fan. Is like I was all in on this type of movie. This is this
Yeah.
is a movie that like horror fans are gonna like, not like the general
Oh
audience.
yeah.
So like if I did this list with like anyone else, I wouldn't be surprised if this is their bottom two. You know what I mean? So I
Mm-hmm.
am totally cool. I am totally happy that I waited to watch it when I did, because now all I have is positive thoughts of it, and it could rise up eventually. But I just out of all of them, I've seen multiple times. It's technically the least fun, even though it does its job in horror, which it's just one of those where it's like there are some fun ones up top that I really enjoy. So
Oh
Mimic,
yeah.
that's my 8, but it's started my 4 star. So at this point, we're all
Okay.
up there. And I will say only one 5 star. So the rest are 4 stars except for my number one, obviously. So
Well, and my to be fair, like Kronos and Crimson Peak were the only ones that don't really crack like a 3 star range. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like Kronos is like maybe a two, 2.5, and Devil's Backbone's like a 3. Again, it's solid.
yeah,
Same with the my next couple of picks. Really, my 9 through 6 are all like 3 ish.
okay,
And then my 5 through 1 are 4. So
There you
again,
go.
nothing cracks like a 5 star for me personally. But yeah, like once I get into my 5, it's all 4s. So yeah, to be fair. So anyways, yeah, my 7 is, it's not really surprising. They're right next to each other. It's the first Hellboy. So
Yeah.
for Hellboy 1 and 2 are just both. It just, when I watched them back to back, I think I dug more of the world building of the first one, and I really liked the World War II stuff at the beginning. Like, I think the movie starts great. All that stuff is really, really cool and a lot of fun, because we've seen other movies that dive into, like, the Nazi occult stuff, and all that kind of thing, which I just kind of dug, like the vibe of all that. And again, Ron Perlman's awesome, and like and it has that one character who's bland as toast, but he's like the the audience member, the
Oh,
whatever the
Myers.
agent is. Yeah,
Yeah,
Myers,
Myers.
yeah, the agent. So, you need him to kind of explain everything, kind of like the Winston and Ghostbusters sort of a thing. You need
Yeah.
him to kind of explain all the concepts and what's going on. But I thought John Hurt was great. Like, I really missed him when he dies. Like, I thought he
Yeah.
was awesome. And yeah, I really do miss him when he passes, like when he passes in the movie, like the movie misses him. But yeah, like, again, all the concepts are good. All the all the stuff is cool. I just feel like the movie just it's like meandering. I don't know if that's like the right word for it. It's just kind of, none of the action scenes don't really work for me. Like, they're just not terribly exciting. I like more of the stuff where they're just kind of hanging out.
So you didn't like
Hellboy and
the Tooth Fairy? You didn't like the scene with the
not
when he
really.
kills and it like replicates and it kind of had that
Eh,
okay.
no, no, I don't think Del Toro does action particularly well. At least in these two movies, I think he was still kind of figuring
At
it
least you're
out.
able to see the
Um,
action in these two movies.
yeah, that's true. We'll talk about that. But yeah, like, I like more of the character stuff. I like when they're just kind of hanging around, the facility, and just all those character beats, and their interactions back and forth. I just like more of that stuff, just kind of hanging around and exploring the characters. Just, yeah, the action just doesn't really work for me. So yeah, the first Hellboy is kind of right next to Hellboy 2. If I had to pick one, I pick the first one. So there you go. That's pretty much it. Not a whole lot to say. These movies are just okay for me personally.
It is what it is.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so my number 7 is one you've already talked about, The Devil's Backbone. This
Okay.
is the movie that, like, if I'm comparing like this and Mimic, this has the edge of it, is because of it has that emotional side with everything with the kids, how they
Mm,
kind of formulate the friendships, the backstory with when the kid that dies, and like you kind of, and
yeah.
the difference of like this and like, I know it's a weird comparison, but like on the Murder of the Orient Express, both of them, Death and Now, and this is like, this movie actually like slowly develops its mystery, and like you're able to start figuring it out as the story's going along, whereas in those
Mm,
two movies it's like, all right, here's what happened, and it's like, whoa, give me a chance to like figure it out. So like, it's really patient with the mystery, and I really enjoy that, because it's not about that, it's about the relationship between the main guy and the kids, and also the kids with each other. Like, it has that outsider
yeah.
feel. We're bullying him, but not because we're like mean kids. It's just we're hard edge kids. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's difference between like more typical bully in movies you see, and then everything with the guy. It's like, I wrote this in my review. I'm like, two things that this movie feels like. It feels like a combination of just everything that you have: friendship, greed, and then karma.
Mm,
What goes around comes around, especially like at the end, and how
right.
and how
Yeah,
it ends up.
definitely.
And it's one of those where I'm like there's so many like parts of this movie that feel like it's like a Pan's Labyrinth like prequel. You know what I mean? And you were
Oh,
hinting
yeah.
at that earlier,
Yeah,
where it's like
yeah.
there's so much about this world. Like, I would not be surprised if these were in the same worlds. You know what I mean? Like
They could be.
Pan's Labyrinth, is it during the Spanish Revolution, and like this is during its time. And you can tell like it's not present day. Obviously, I think it says like in the 50s. I don't know if I remember
Yeah,
right.
no, they're both period pieces, but they're
Yeah,
both in Spain. So yeah, they could be like a stone's throw away from each other. You know what I mean? The other side of the
yeah.
country or something like
And
that.
you can
I
just
mean, you
tell
could
like
definitely
the
see that.
vibes that it really,
Yeah.
feels like that. So it's one of those where, like I said, it's the difference between like this Mimic and like Nightmare Alley, where it's like I care about like these kids and like what they're going through, because like it's like telling a story through these kids' eyes, but also still giving the perspective of the main guy. Like, you're not rooting for him, you're not even justifying anything he's doing, but like you kind of get it. You know what I mean? It's one of those where like you're in a time period. It's like anything, like in Fargo. Like obviously you don't want them to like do their bad stuff, but like you get that like they're criminals and stuff happens, and then there's now they're trying to like fight with each other, and it's like there's the karma. Like it's got vibes like that where it's like if greed wins all the time. Karma's a bitch, and greed is a winner. Like greed's gonna always,
And it's always gold. Everybody goes crazy over gold in all these movies. It's just
shiny.
Gold corrupts. Yeah, we love shiny things and shiny gold and shiny silver, and like we just love that stuff. Yeah, that corrupts the mind.
That actually reminds me. I don't want to forget later, but it's that scene in Hellboy 2 with the guy with the no legs, and he's like, "Oh, shiny," and he's like biting inside.
Yeah,
shiny. Right. It really gets you. It's just so yeah. Pan's Labyrinth. It's beautiful. It's one of those where like he does a great job of setting up the world and like the sets and the production to fit the 50s and the period piece of it, but still like feel wide. He's got that. He does a good job with the camera. Like it's wide scoped. It's beautiful to look at. The colors pop. Similar to Mimic, it feels dirty. Like like it's like oh my god, like it's this world's lived in, and like when people bleed.
Well, this one's more sweaty. Like you feel sweaty with the character. Everybody's like sweating all over the place, and everybody's constantly everybody feels hot. Yeah, no, and as opposed to Mimic, which just feels like slimy and gooey. This one feels like desert hot. Yeah, you can feel like the heat off of every scene.
So he does a good job of like really like building the universe, both on screen, but also like metaphorically with everything that he's telling the story and the world building. So Devil's Backbone, it was a good time. Well, not a good time, but you know what I mean. It did its job, and I think it's a good movie. So that's my number 7.
I would definitely encourage people to seek it out if you're a Del Toro fan and you haven't gone back to see it, because like I said, I think you'll see a lot of things that he would develop later. And like you said, it's still a beautiful movie. He's still shot very well, and there's some really cool effects. Like I said, the ghost effects of the kid is like really really cool and in concept. And it's cool stuff, and he's got some good atmospheric scenes. So again, I think he would expand on things and do better later. But it's still a pretty solid effort. Yeah, again, I enjoyed it for a one watch. I just don't see myself going back to it a lot. Just one of those kind of things.
Absolutely. All right, what is your number 6?
Number 6 is Blade 2, Blade Dos. So Blade 2, which I hadn't seen in ages. I've seen the first Blade a lot, but I hadn't gone back to this one in a minute. I had fun with it. It's entertaining. It's still Wesley Snipes kicking ass, kicking vampire ass, kicking monster ass, and good side characters. I like the addition of Norman Reedus as the kind of tech guy, in the movie. The
guy in the chair.
Guy. Yeah, the guy in the chair. He makes a good guy in the chair, and I like the concept of the movie of him kind of having to team up with the vampires. Of course, Ron Perlman's like one of them, and he stands out amongst everybody, because of course he's in there. Because why wouldn't it be?
I wasn't sure if this was Ron Perlman from a Del Toro movie or Ron Perlman from Alien Resurrection.
I know, yeah. It almost feels like the same character if he just like shaved his head bald or whatever. It's like the exact same character, like wearing the sunglasses. It's crazy how like he plays a lot of those characters back then. But I like the concept of him having to team up with them to take on these Reapers. I like the designs of like how their mouths open up, kind of like predators. That stuff was cool. Again, you could see the vision here, and he was kind of, I think around that time he was doing sort of a one for me, one for you type of situation. This was his attempt to do a pretty mainstream, kind of a comic booky, action movie. And I think it's mostly good. Again, I think the action's a little wonky. Like I think the first one was a little better directed action wise. But this one has, more imagination as far as the horror aspects go, which you could see it being a Del Toro movie. You know what I mean? Like you can definitely feel those influences throughout the movie. So again, I liked it. It was entertaining. I just think I'd probably go back to the first Blade a little bit more, which is not really a fault of Del Toro. I just think that one just kicks like from beginning to end. I just think that was a lot of fun. But it's a solid sequel, and I can see myself going back to it. So it's definitely better than Blade Trinity. That's for fuck sure. It's still
the worst thing about Blade 2 is the fact it doesn't have the blood rain scene. You know what I mean? That's the scene where it's like
the blood rave. When
you think of any type of comic book movie, that's one of the first scenes you think of in
Oh
general,
yeah.
let alone for these movies. You know what I mean? So like, like I'll talk about Blade 2 in a minute with specifics, but like I will say that's the one thing where it's like there's no blood rave. You know what I mean? There's
There's
nothing
no that scene that
yeah.
people remember. Like people remember that opening of Blade where yeah, they're all having the blood rave and then he stands there and it kind of parts like the Red Sea and he's just
Yep.
standing there looking badass and he pulls out the sword, you know what I mean? Just goes to town. Like it doesn't have, again, that's what I'm talking. It just doesn't have that moment, like that epic feeling that the first
Yeah.
one kind of had. But again, I like a lot of the things, the elements in it, and I would go back to this one more than I'd go back to the Hellboy movies. But that's just me personally. So
Yeah,
yeah,
clearly.
but yeah, clearly, yeah,
Back to back ones that you've already talked about. My number 6
yeah,
is Crimson Peak. So
hmm
this is a movie that I've always loved. You know what I mean? I've always loved this from day one. Honestly, this is one of those where it's like it bums me out that it's not like top 100 material. It's just missing something, and I don't know what it is. I feel like if
hmm
I'm in the right mood, it's like boom, it's right there. But like when I rewatch it for this, I'm like, yeah, I'm not like in the passionate mood. I'm more of in the hey, let me just make sure I got the beats. So starting off, the one thing like the Charlie Hunnam character, him being a researcher or like being a scholar, you know what I mean, and like having his love for Mia and like everything that he's got going on for there. So like obviously he's got his implementation of the story. So he's like the everyday man, similar to like Mia. And then you got the creepiness that's with Hiddleston and Chastain, and so I'm opposite with you. I actually really like what Chastain's doing. I love the hamminess effect of it because when you think of like ghost stories and witches and stuff like that, it's like they are a little over the top because they are, there's something off about them. And I feel like it's her holding back everything, her truth, intentions and like the dynamic. I mean, obviously she's holding back the relationship between her and Hiddleston, her brother. And then, she's also
hmm
holding back, everything that's going on with the house. And like, as it slowly starts to get more gothic and more horrific and more like showing what it's doing, this like, so the difference between like this and Nightmare Alley, it's like this one for me builds up its world to pay off to what it's actually trying to tell and where the world is. Where in the opposite of Nightmare Alley, the world starts off in the carnival and then it builds up to like quote unquote the real world. And it's like it's not you want to it all you can think about is like, man, I wish I was back in the carnival. So like if people like the ending, then it hit, you're like, oh, it ends in the carnival, whereas in this one, you're building up to the what's going on in this house, the mystery between Tom Hiddleston and Jessica Chastain. You're rooting for Mia Wasikowska, but also like it's one of those where it's like I don't know, like there's something like you just want to figure out the mystery, and so it's one of those where, like you said, it's beautiful to look at everything with the snow and the blood and like the violence when Jessica Chastain starts to like stab people and
right.
get wild, like it's ruthless because that like at the end of the day she believes what she's doing, and like that's what they say about some of the best villains. And I'm not saying she's one of the best villains, but I'm saying like they say it, so at least you can give credit for
hmm
that. It's one of those where it's like that she is doing what she like, and honestly, there's many scenes in the movie where like is Tom Hiddleston just with her enough because she's his sister? Does he actually believe in the cause and in what they're doing? Is he actually helping out Mia, and does he actually love her? Is this all a facade? Like it does a good job of like towing the line throughout like the majority of the film. So like you're really on pins and needles when it like gets bonkers in that last 20 minutes or so, and
hmm
it's just a fun time. I enjoy it. And then everything with Mia's dad, like the politics side of it, like it sets up the world, but it's still really like enclosed and it's in the house. And I don't know, it just gives me a fun vibe, and it's one of those I've always dug, and I've I I don't want to say I understand when people like poop on this. Like it's like this and Mother are two of the movies that like they're not the same by any means, but like they're two of the movies where I'm like,
Well, I haven't seen Mother. We'll get to that when we get to Aronofsky. We'll see what I think when we get
like I said,
there.
they're
I
not
have
the
not seen it yet.
same. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
more than likely, if you don't like
Mhm.
this or Mother, you're not gonna like the other. Like it's just one of those. So like
Mhm.
now, no, I mean I don't want to go in and make it seem like you're gonna now maybe give you low expectation. Maybe you'll love Mother. I don't know,
I,
but
I, I, I know nothing about it, so I will go in with just a
yeah,
blank
like I said, story
slate. You know what I
thematically,
mean? So
they're
I have
not
no
they're
idea.
not similar. There's nothing
hmm
related. But for some reason, it's one of those movies where it's like I just think of these two when I think of like these types of movies where people are like
hmm
all or nothing. You know what I mean? Like I've
Yeah.
had diehard fans who are like 5 stars. They loved it. It's beautiful. They love the gothic stuff. Or they're like, this is just pile of dog shit. And it's like, it's really no in between. Not many people just think that's fine. And it's kind of a bummer because it's like, I feel like there's a lot to like, love here, and there's a lot to like want to revisit. So like, I get it because I've had this conversation for years with people, but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's always a bummer when it happens.
Hey, to be fair, my ex loved this movie and watched it a lot, so it was on a lot when I was with her. So, and it just didn't
You
work
just
for
had
me.
bad
But boy, did
memories
it
and
work!
you're just taking it out.
Boy, did it work for her. But that's fine. But just goes more to your point. You kind of either love it or hate it. But yeah, there's not a whole lot in between on that. But yeah, that's fine. I mean, I get why people like it. It's just not for me, and I didn't dig it. So, yeah. That's all it is. So now I'm getting into all my fours. So my
Okay.
only real in kind of separating and ranking them as really I just took it to more, which I'm more likely to rewatch in the future, if that
Okay.
makes sense. Go back to a lot and really go explore some more. So having said that, my number 5 is Pan's Labyrinth. Um, so,
One of those
and
lists.
again, it's a 4, so it's a 4-star movie. I like it a lot, but I don't see myself going back to watch it a lot. That's the only reason it's at the bottom of the top 5.
I just
And
want to,
again,
before you go in further, is
yeah.
it the foreign language aspect, or is it just the story
No, it
itself?
has no, that has nothing to do with the foreign language. Oddly enough, when I was watching this and Devil's Backbone, I took a whole lot of Spanish in high school, like a whole
Okay.
lot. I took 4 years of Spanish, so it's one of those things where it's still rattling around in my brain
Yeah.
somewhere. I just can't really speak it, but I found myself. I could still understand it pretty well.
Yeah.
Like as far as like if people were just having conversations like on screen or something, I can get the gist of it, and kind
Yeah.
of. So I found myself actually not watching the subtitles a lot and just kind of listening, and I was still getting it. So it's just rattling around in there somewhere. If I kind of jump back on, it can come back. So it has nothing to do with that, like with the Spanish aspect. I just wish he leaned more into the fairy tale stuff. That's the only reason it doesn't bump up a little bit higher. I would have liked it more if it was more if it was heavier on her kind of doing the fairy tale labyrinthian kind of stuff. Like I feel like there's a couple of stretches in this movie where I'm missing that, and it keeps kind of hanging around with the captain and hanging around with with the pregnant mom and all that kind of stuff. And I was finding myself wanting to go back to see what was going on with with the goat man or whatever they call the I don't know what they call everybody, but and see what the night. It was like after she does her first task, there's like a good chunk of time where it's like I'm waiting for her to do the second one, and I'm like, okay, can we just get like I just want to get into that, and like I want to follow that and have a little fun with it. So and the captain stuff, it was like it was scary, and he's great. And it was definitely horrific the stuff he does to people in the movie. But I was just more interested in that other stuff, so I wanted a little more of that. That's all it was. I wish he'd leaned into more of that and less on the human stuff. That's really all it was. But I still like it a lot. I mean, obviously, what can be said that hasn't already been said about the pale man, and a lot of the
Yeah.
creature designs and the
Right.
fact that it's all practical, and it's Doug Jones, my boy, that's Abe Sapien, doing his thing. He's great, and it's one of the most creative creature designs out there, and genuinely scary when she eats the grapes and he's like kind of crawling after her and kind of stumbling around. It's generally kind of freaky and fun,
There's a thing
and
where
that's the stuff.
Stephen King literally that was like one of his most scariest scenes that he's in like
Yeah.
recent memories.
Well, and I wanted more. I just wanted more of that. Like, I wish he had just done more of that. Like, I was. Anytime we were doing that kind of stuff in the movie, I was like way, way into it. And then when you get back to the captain stuff, it's like, okay, he's a bad guy who's not a good person. Like I got it, and he's very good, but it's just like and I know it's like a metaphor of like people are worse than monsters. Sometimes I get it. I just wanted in this movie particularly, I just wanted more of the girl doing the fairy tale stuff. You know what I mean? So that's the only reason why I probably won't come back to it a lot, because I thought there was more of that in the movie, and then when I came back to it, there wasn't as much as I thought there was. So that's the only thing. So still a very enjoyable movie. It's still a 4 out of 5 for me. I liked it a lot, and I liked revisiting it. And my 4K looks amazing. I have it on 4K, and it looks great. But yeah, so yeah, that's the only reason it's number 5. I don't see myself revisiting it like a ton. Maybe once every couple of years, something like that. I'll go back and watch it. But yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about that later.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, what do you want? You want me to give it 1 star? Like I didn't give it 1 star. I like it. Like
yeah.
4 out of 5. It's in my top 5. for Del Toro. Well, given the fact that I'm not really a big Del Toro fan, that's pretty high for Pan's Labyrinth. So it is what it is.
Broke
You're
my
just
heart.
you're just you're just thinking about what I've got above it. That's probably what you're thinking about,
Not
isn't
helping.
it?
All right, so
Yeah, it's
number
not helping,
4
right?
or number 5 for me. This is a movie that I can't put my finger on it why, but this movie has gone down almost every rewatch, and I just don't know why. But obviously, it's still in the top 5. I rewatched it last night just to like, all right, where do I want to rank this with Crimson Peak? And this edged it out just a little bit because it's got, the heart and the magic behind it, and that's The Shape of Water. It's
Shape of
Best Picture
Water. Oh,
winner.
we
Yeah,
could talk about it because it's my number 4. So we can go and
yeah.
get into it.
So
Yeah.
The Shape of Water, it builds up this universe with everything with Sally Hawkins' character of how
Mhm.
she can't talk. Octavia Spencer is essentially her voice, and then
Mhm.
you're building up that friendship with her, but also with Richard Jenkins and everything that he's going on. It does a great job of like having him as a gay character without like shoving it in our face in terms of like, hey, you know what I mean? This, it's what his
Yeah.
characteristic is, and it's totally fine. Like that's what I want from movies like this, where it's like you have that representation without making it a like,
Mhm.
a preachy
It's
movie.
not his defining characteristic. It just is part of his character.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that
You know?
you have
Yeah.
the scene with him and the guy at the diner once he actually confesses love
Hmm.
for him. But like in that period, like that's how they would respond. So it's
Right.
not like saying, hey, this is how everyone thinks today. You're like, no, that's just how they would be, back then, and that's fine. And I'm
Hmm.
totally cool with that. It actually adds a lot of like layers to it because you have that broken heartness to him because it's kind of it's like this movie. That's like I said, it's really crazy to me why this movie isn't like as high up as I would want it to be because this movie like reminds me of like us like in the film community, like we're the outsiders, you know what I mean? Like we all have
Hmm.
our own clique and we understand each other, but like the masses just don't get it. And
Hmm.
it's one of those where it's like it's just it has fun, but it has heart. It's I love that the classic Hollywood vibes to it was her living over the theater, the tap dancing scene that they do,
Hmm.
just the relationship. He's a painter and like how you know he gets fired and they're like pushing him along, like, oh, we want to change the color, and it's like, oh, I can do that, and like, that's not what I meant. It's like, like, yeah, get the hint, buddy. And it's like, there's
Right.
yeah, and then obviously everything with
Mm.
Michael Shannon, like he's
He's so
like
good.
yeah, like what you were kind of just talking about in Pan's Labyrinth, where it's like men are worse than monsters. You know what I mean? Sometimes men are the monsters, but
Hmm.
once again, it's not hammering home that message. It just gives you that dichotomy of the two. You know what I mean? And it's like
Hmm.
on paper, the monster, the fish man, you assume he would be the villain or he would have something to him, but like no, he's actually
No.
got some magical stuff to him. He's got some heart, but obviously he's on the defensive because it's always a constant war. Is he a god? Is he just a a serpent? Like what is he? And then and then how they connect. And obviously it's one of those movies. It's been memed to death because it's the fish fucking movie. It's like yeah. Once that's the worst thing about the internet is when you just put a label
Yeah.
on movies just because of just like
Right.
The Revenant. Oh, that's the bear fucking movie, or that's the movie he got his Oscar he didn't deserve. He just grunted his way to his Oscars. Like, let's
Hmm.
just watch the movies and enjoy them for what they
No.
are and the actual art behind them. And that's
Hmm.
what it is with Fish of Water. And I mean Fish of Water, The Shape of Water.
The
That like
fish out of water movie,
exactly,
literally.
pretty much. So,
Yeah.
like I said, I can't put my finger on it, like why it's gone down. I
Hmm.
literally don't know why. Like, I don't have any flaws. I don't know if it's the pacing, if it's just I really don't know, but like, so this used to be like a 5-star, like borderline top 100, like in the top 100. And now it's like clearly not in the top 100, but it's a solid 4-star. It's never going to go under a 4-star. It's not like it's always going to be a
Hmm.
good movie. It's just missing something for me. So that's why it's my number 5 instead
Yeah,
of
yeah, no, it's a solid movie, and I love. I think for me, like the relationship at the core of the thing, and just how it kind of slowly develops between Sally Hawkins and Doug Jones. It's not, again, like you said, it's not just the fish fucking movie. Like there's a relationship there. There's a connection there that develops over time, and them trying to get with each other and trying to connect on that level. But yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful story when you watch it, and it shows that it's kind of a Beauty and the Beast type thing, and a little bit more of a modern. Del Toro loves fairy tales, and you can tell that from Pan's Labyrinth. Obviously, he loves fairy tales, and this is kind of a modern telling again of a fairy tale. And but yeah, I like it a lot, and like I said, Michael Shannon's just so damn good in this movie. Like it could have been such a cliche character, but he's so good with those nuances that he brings to all his performances. Oh my
One of
god,
my
just the
favorite
writing.
lines is like, you judge a man from when he washed his hands before or after he tends to his needs, because like his
Yeah.
hands are dirty in life, or he dirties himself
Hmm.
from his body, and it's one of those where like it's similar to like that scene in Drive where Albert Brooks' character is like, oh, or no, when Ryan Gosling's like, my hands are dirty, and then Albert Brooks like, yeah, so are mine, and
Yeah,
it's kind
so
of
am I.
hinting
Yeah.
at, yeah, and it has that here where it's like that it's one of those nuances and one of those like metaphors and symbolisms to like really show who a character, because at that point he wasn't true evil yet, but it hinted at it, and it's
Right.
very smart writing.
Yeah, no, and I like it. I love the production design of the movie. It really feels like a kind of alternate 50s or something, like an alternate universe kind of 50s sort of a thing. Yeah, all the stuff with the movie theater is cool. You can tell there's a lot of things that Del Toro is fascinated with are in this movie, both like creatures and movies and period piece kind of stuff in the past. He definitely plays around with a lot of the stuff in this movie, and yeah, it's really good. And yeah, I'm kind of the same way as you. I don't go back to this movie like a lot.
Yeah.
It's not one I put on a whole lot. But when I do, I do get wrapped up in it. You know what I mean? It's very, very solid from start to finish. But yeah, it's my number four personally. Just because again, much like Pan's Labyrinth, it's like I just don't see myself putting these on frequently. But they're very, very good when I do sit down and watch them. So yeah, I like The Shape of Water as well.
Yeah. So going into my number four,
Hmm.
now we are going into let's have a little fun. Let's have a little fun. My number four is the first Hellboy.
Hmm.
And this is a movie that I'm all in on Ron Perlman and everything that he's doing. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
this is I vibe out with everything that he's got going on with him and Liz, the relationship that they build up. It starts off slow because you're kind of like wondering like why is he the way he is? The relationship between him and Jeffrey Tambor, where it's like, he's like, I'm medicated. He's like, yeah, it's over the counter, but this is medication. It's just like little things like that where
Yeah. Yeah.
he's just so stressed out because they're supposed to be like undercover and secret, and it's like
Hmm.
that's why I was like hinting at earlier, where it's like Del Toro is capable of having like you know humor and like life to his characters, and it's not all just dark and grim, and I give him a lot of credit for that. And this movie has everything of it. Like like I said, when I'm going into like my rankings of my top four, or technically my 2 through 3, because my one is cemented, my 2 through 3,
Hmm.
the difference between this and my 2 and 3 is it really is that Myers character. He's just so like yeah, because
Yeah, he's kind
he's
of
always,
bland, but
yeah,
he's kind of necessary at least for the first. They wrote him out of the next one. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Because
trying to
he's not
send him to
necessary at that
South
point.
America
But
or Antarctica or wherever he said it
Antarctica,
was.
wherever it was, yeah, yeah,
Because they're like, all
yeah.
right, now that the
Now
audience
we're good.
understands the world, yeah.
You know what this is. Let's go.
But it's
Yeah.
evident throughout the entire thing. Like, there's only like the one scene where Hellboy and Myers are talking. I think it's on like a bench or whatever, and he's kind of like venting and getting relationship advice, and he's
Hmm.
not like actively trying to give him advice. He's just like there for him, and sometimes like Hellboy doesn't really have anyone to like talk to, because like Abe, he's obviously he's his own thing. He's he like
Hmm.
he's very transparent. He's not. He's kind of like 3CPO, where it's like all or nothing. Like he's gonna just tell it like it is. You
No,
know what I mean? Like,
he's matter of fact.
yeah,
No filter. He's gonna say
yeah.
be very matter of fact about what the situation
So
is
you
or
can't
what's
really
going
bounce
on.
off like
Yeah,
feelings off him,
yeah,
which is
no.
ironic because we get into two. Abe he's got to get
Hmm.
drunk to do it, but we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, so everything with this movie, like it's just a lot of fun, and it's just one of those where, like you said, the opening scene gave me like a obviously this happened later, but it gave me like Captain America: First Avenger vibes with everything going
Oh
on
yeah.
in
Oh
that
for
movie, and
sure.
it's like I don't. It could be a coincidence that they it's just similar tones, but like I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if Joe Johnson was like, "Yo, Hellboy won that opening. I'm just gonna pretty much create my whole movie based on that.
It's like
That shit was fire."
Nazis doing weird stuff with like supernatural things. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I'm gonna do the exact same
I'm
thing
all
because
for
it's
it.
pretty much the exact same opening.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
because the
totally.
Red Skull, he's red. They got a red devil. Let's
Hmm.
go. And
Hmm.
what was that thing? They were like, when they first find him, they're like, "What's that thing on his arm? That is
He's
his
like a
arm."
red monkey. Oh yeah, and he's like, it's a red monkey, and he's got what is that? Yeah,
Yeah,
like, and he gives him the baby root bars. Oh, like all
yeah,
that stuff's great. I love all
yeah.
that stuff.
I don't know if that I don't know like, cause I'm not well versed in the Hellboy comics, so I don't know if that's from the comics or if that's more of like a Goonies type of reference, with the payday and Goonies and the baby Ruth. I think
I don't
it's
know.
what It might be the same, but the point is, it's similar. Where it's like, oh, that's fun, and everything going on with Hellboy and the cats, and like that's just
Hmm.
something that he can like vibe to. Because like when you think of like who Hellboy is, he's got that hard edge, and he's that shell, and like that's a cat. You know what I mean? Cats want to keep
Hmm.
themselves. They're not friendly. They do their job and they handle their business, and they're all about themselves. And they're kind of stuck up, and the Hellboy's kind of that. But also he also likes to be in the light, and it's like really funny the irony of that, because like when he's like at home, quote unquote, he's in his room doing his own thing and like being a kid. You know what I mean? He really is like a grown, man child, and it has some humanity to it. That's really surprising. Like you said, the relationship between him and John
Yeah.
Hurt, and just the father son stuff. Like, I think it was done decently in the remake with David Harbour and Ian
See,
McShane.
I haven't actually seen that
Yeah,
movie, so
like
I don't know, and I don't have any like biases as far as like, oh, I don't want to see it because Ron Perlman's not in it. Like, I don't have that hang up. I just haven't like actually seen it.
yeah,
But to
I
sit
only
down
saw
and
it
see
the
if it
one
works
time.
with different. Yeah.
And I think it's like fine. You know what I mean? It's fine. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
don't have an issue with it, but it doesn't have the magic that this one has. But I will say that the Ian McShane, David Harbour stuff is the best part of it. You know what I mean? So it
Hmm.
does a good job of at least having that relationship, which is really important. So yeah, this movie's a lot of fun, and I can watch it. Kind of what you said when you were ranking them. Like I can just pop it on and just have it in the background and just have a fun time. It's
Yeah.
got a good soundtrack. It's got a good Christmas vibe to it. You know what I mean? It's got the family stuff. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? It's just a good time. You know what I mean? Like, you know.
Yeah, to me, I'm just more where like I could put this on and enjoy the character scenes, but I just kind of tune out for the action. I think the action is just kind of okay. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
wish the action was better
fair.
than it was. I just like the character, but all your stuff you're talking about you love is like the character stuff, and I love the character stuff in the movie. All the little character beats and the scenes where
Yep.
they're just hanging out, and all the relationships in the movie are great. Like I like a lot of that stuff. I just wish he was in a better movie as far as somebody that knew what to do with the character action wise. You know what the character could really do. That's really all it is. It's like, yeah, I just wish he was better suited for that. That's all. That's all it was. But
Definitely
yeah,
interesting. So, what is your number three?
my number three is his most recent Nightmare Alleys, Nightmare Alley, which so I watched it. I watched it in the morning because I knew it was 2.5 hours. So it was like after I woke up, I like eating breakfast, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to watch a long movie. And I was really surprised at how much I really dug it. I really dug Nightmare Alley like a lot, and I got really sucked up into it. I watched it straight through. I didn't even like need a break. I will agree that the carnival stuff is better than the stuff in the second half. But not to say that I didn't enjoy the second half stuff too. But I do agree I could have stayed in the carnival stuff like for the whole movie and seen something develop, there. I will
Yeah,
agree with that. But that carnival stuff is so damn good. I think it's some of the best stuff he's ever done. I just love the look of everything. I love the performances. Willem Dafoe is like I'm convinced he's from another decade. Like that dude like belongs in like the 1910s, as a carnival barker. Like he's so natural at it. Like I'm convinced he's like reincarnated from somebody from that era. Like he's so good. And like, yeah, everything, all that stuff is great. I find all that stuff fascinating about how they're doing all the carnival, scam, not really scams, but like how they kind of pull their tricks and, get the people to fork over their money. And yeah, all the production design is so damn good. And I really got wrapped up in where the Bradley Cooper stuff was going. Again, when they revealed kind of not the this doesn't have anything to do with like the ending, but like
yeah,
when you kind of see where it goes in the second half, like where him and
yeah,
Rooney Mara go, that sort of stuff.
yeah.
Again, it's not as interesting, but I still found it interesting because I like all that like fake psychic like telekinesis, mentalism shit. Like I was big on
Yeah.
like James Randi and like him debunking all that stuff. So like kind of I found it fascinating how they pull the verbal cues and the little things and how he kind of figures out what people their backstories and everything. Like all this stuff is a lot of fun. Like I still really dug a lot of that and yeah, I kind of enjoyed the little twists and turns of the final act. I didn't know I haven't seen the original, so I didn't know where it was going or like what it
I
was.
still haven't,
Um,
because now I'm not rushing out
yeah,
because of this. Yeah,
right. And I know that one's shorter, so you might like it because it's like an hour shorter. It's like an hour and 40-minute movie or something.
it might help.
So maybe you like it. It's a little more condensed. But yeah, I was just really surprised and it caught me off guard how much I really got into like the whole thing, and I was really into all the characters and yeah, I just kind of I vibed with it, man. It hit me at the right time. Maybe it just worked for me, and I could see myself going back, especially that first hour, going back and watching it again a couple of times. So I dug it, man. I dug Nightmare Alley. It worked. It worked for me. So, and I can see why it wouldn't work for some people, but it clicked with me, and I liked it a lot.
That's fair. Like I said, it's one of those where when the stuff I really liked, I really liked. I just the stuff I didn't like, I just didn't care about. It's not like I didn't dislike
Mm-hmm.
anything. I just didn't care. You know what I mean? It just I don't know. There's this movie from I think the 50s, maybe 50s, 60s. Ray Milland, the man with X-ray eyes or X-ray vision, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Where it's not the exact same thing, but it's like well, man,
Mm-hmm.
it's more similar than you expect. You know what I mean? So it's like I've seen it before, and not saying like it's a retread, obviously, because this is based on Nightmare Alley, which was before that from the 40s. You know what I mean? So like it's not like that, but it's one of those where it's like that at least is focused on the story for the most part as a whole, where this one bounced back and forth. And like it's a build up,
Right.
but like I said, the first 20 minutes, it's like there will be blood. And, he hardly says anything the entire time. He doesn't have enough character to him. So in the second half, when he's meant technically all character and personality, I just don't have that connection. Like, Bradley Cooper's obviously great. If it was an actor that was bad, I feel like the writing doesn't really give that character enough to like really be
Mm-hmm.
memorable outside of Bradley Cooper's performance. Like whereas like Willem Dafoe, he's interesting. So not only is his character, I mean his acting obviously fantastic, but his character is also interesting. You know what I mean? So like you think about
Well,
him.
and how you think about how much of a scumbag he really is with all the geek stuff, and it's
Yeah,
like that's horrifying, man. Like all that
exactly.
stuff, like when you really stop and think about it, I felt so bad for that first guy, like in the movie, when he's just like, I'm not like this, I'm not like this, or it's not me, all that kind of stuff, in the cage, like that
Yeah.
stuff just hit me, dude. I thought that stuff was great, and like a lot of the
Especially
concepts in the movie
where it
just
goes
just hit me.
later. You know what I mean? It's
Oh yeah, no, I mean it kind of there's things that come full circle. Again, we won't spoil it, but yeah, I kind of saw where it was going about 20 minutes before it gets there, but like where it was going to end up. But still, like I still enjoyed it and had a lot of fun with it. So I really like Nightmare Alley. I can see myself going back to it a lot actually, and then putting this one on. So yeah, I dug it.
I'm happy you did. Uh, my number three is actually one that I rewatched today just to figure out where I'm gonna put it, and I'm glad I did because that's Blade Two.
Play
This
two.
movie, this movie was just fun, dude. Like this
Mm-hmm.
movie, it starts off with Blade and Scud and Chris Christopherson's character that I'm blanking right now. Whistler.
Whistler.
Yeah, the more
Yeah,
popular.
yeah.
Like they're three that builds
Mm-hmm.
up like what they're doing and how they're gonna kind of like work together as a team, and then it brings in the Blood Pack, which obviously it has that cool action scene, and then you're formulating that relationship, which I guess I teased, I joked about earlier, but like similar to the Alien Resurrection, where it's like, oh, we're part of the team, and then you're kind of like having them being
Mm-hmm.
combative and stuff, or like even like in Aliens, so it's like, oh, you have the new person, they're giving them shit, but like this one at least has reason to, because like they were trained to hunt Blade, you know what I mean? But now they have to work
Mm-hmm.
together because now they realize that there's a bigger, enemy, and there's
Bigger
more
threat. Yeah.
there's more going on. So
Did
now
you
now
notice, by the way, the head Reaper guy is the same guy from Hellboy 2? The Prince guy?
that's him.
Same actor. Yeah,
Prince
same dude.
Vara. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
uh-huh. Same guy. Yeah. You can
that's
see
pretty
it in
cool.
the face when you watch him. Like it's the same dude, and you can see why he uses him in multiple movies, kind of like Perlman. You know what I mean? Like he's got that look to him.
Yeah,
He's kind of a strange looking dude.
yeah, exactly. Oh, now, yep. Now I know what you're talking about. It took me a minute to
Hmm.
like, which one are you talking about? Yep. Oh yeah, now,
Hmm.
and everything that he's doing in that movie, like, is he a vampire? Is he not? Like, what's his kinks and his quirks, and like that opening scene, like with him, like actually. So before we get into the the trio, that opening scene with him and everything, it's like honestly,
Hmm.
when I did this rewatch, I'm like, I know I've seen this. Like, I know I've seen this.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't fucking remember any of this. So like, I actually went in like fresh with
I
it.
never, I didn't remember any of it either. Like I said, most of my memories are from the first movie. Like I had like very
Yeah,
vague memories of the second one. I remembered Ron Perlman was in it. I remembered Norman Reedus was in it. But I didn't remember like almost anything about the plot or like any of the action scenes or none of that shit. So like I'm
exactly.
glad I rewatched it. Yeah, because
So
I didn't
this
remember
was
jack
definitely, it
shit.
felt really fresh, and I was like, this was just a fun time, dude. Like this was just awesome. And now that I've grown to like become a Wesley Snipes fan, like just
Hmm.
as an actor and just as a personality, like just seeing him like be Wesley Snipes, but also still feel like Blade. You know, what I mean, it could have
Hmm.
easily been like Samuel L. Jackson. Kind of how Samuel L. Jackson. At first, it's like, oh, it's Samuel L. Jackson. You're like, oh yeah, it's Nick Fury, but it's Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. It's the same thing here, where it's like
Hmm.
it's Wesley Snipes clearly being Wesley Snipes, but still being Blade. And it's awesome that he was able to do that both in the first one and the second one with different directors. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
it it's just a lot of fun, and it's quickly paced. Like it knows what it's trying to tell. Just boom, 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 going on to the next, and then everything, like you said, the face. Wow. Literally, as I'm watching, I'm like, I honestly do not know if that is some of the best CG I've ever seen, or if that is just an amazing practical effect, because it just looks so smooth.
Some of them were CG and some of them were practical. It depends on the shot, but like when they do have the practical stuff, dude, like it's crazy good. Like it's
wow.
really, really good.
That is some of the best practicals I've ever seen. Because when I watched it, I was like, I do not remember that at all. And like you said, it was a combination of the Predator face being like a face hugger. You know what I mean? Doing that stuff. And like, as fresh as we are off the Alien Predator franchise, is like it's like that was like perfect. I'm like, that was awesome. So like it's one of those where it's like, you said you didn't dig the action as much, and that's fine. But I feel like this movie, obviously it's about the action, but it's more about the journey and the build up of the rivalry and like what they're really going through, and like Blade obviously dealing with everything that he's going with, of just all of his maternal stuff, and who he is as Blade. You know what I mean? Just like still trying to like be him, and he's getting older, and he's still like he's dealing with doing his injections and stuff. You know what I mean? It's one of those where it's like he's so like hard nosed, but also he's still got his vulnerabilities to him at the same time. But like he does a great job of like covering, similar to like Hellboy, where he does a good job of just like when he needs to like put on that face, he's got it on, and he's all for business. And the scene when he picks on Ron Perlman's character when he puts the bomb in his head, like it's just so bad.
Suicide Squad, anybody? Ripping that shit off? Totally.
So I am so glad I rewatched this, and this would have been like my number 8 or 7 before this rewatch, like because I just thought it was like fine, but like I said, I just didn't remember anything from it. So I rewatched Blade like a month ago, just because I was like, oh, I want to watch it, and then I rewatched this. So I'm so happy because I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm even more excited for the new Blade.
Use your own discretion in going back to Blade Trinity.
Still haven't seen it, so no rush.
Well, let's just say Wesley Snipes has checked out. He is thoroughly checked out in that movie. He did not get along with the director. Ryan Reynolds is in it, basically doing his Deadpool thing. So if you're into that, there's a lot of that. And Triple H is in it. If you like wrestling,
the director of the third one, that's David S. Goyer, right? The writer.
David S. Goyer.
So
yeah.
Some people are just meant to write, but So that was my number 3. We are going into your top 2.
My number 2 is Mimic.
Mimic is I didn't want to quite put it down. I didn't want to quite put it down, but I had a feeling.
Yeah. Mimic rocks. Mimic is so much fun, and like me, I'm a horror guy. Like I know you're kind of still newish to horror, but I'm a horror guy, and I forgot how damn fun Mimic is. Mimic is so fun, and Mimic just right from the get-go, it's like raining and nasty, and like this atmosphere of this movie, I just like I get right into it. I'm like sucked right in. It's just like it pulls me, and oh my god, the cockroach like creature mutant design, whatever it is, like it's so good. Like for 1997, like I know there's some CGI sprinkled out throughout, and it's 1997 CGI. But for 1997 CGI, it's not horrible. Yeah. It's passable. But like when they do all the close-up stuff, when the creatures are just like walking around, it's great, and it's so good. And I like all the stuff where it's like the half man, half bug too, when he's got like the wings down, like all that stuff is cool. And yeah, like I said, the characters are not the greatest. They're fairly cookie cutter, for what they are. It's Mira Sorvino is the, she's the scientist who kind of, knows everything, and she's got a very basic relationship with the dude with the glasses. And, but like Charles S. Dutton is great, like he was in Alien 3. Like Charles S. Dutton he's so good in everything he does. Like he's such a hard ass, but he's so much fun. I had forgotten Josh Brolin was in this movie, and I was like, oh my god, it's 1997 Josh Brolin. Like awesome. Like
he kind of feels
I'm
like
down
Brad
for that.
Pitt, where he's like eating, and it's like there's something about him that's like
it feels like Brad Pitt's character in 7. Yeah, he's very, very similar. He's just kind of he's got his like hair, just kind of flopping around, he's just kind of a laid back, I'm the cop guy, whatever. But yeah, he's still good. But yeah, like I just got more and more sucked into like just seeing where it was gonna go, and like this movie has balls, man. Like you talked about those 2 kids, man. Like how it kills those 2 kids. Like he doesn't give a shit in this movie. Like he's got anybody's. When you see that, you're just like, man, anything could happen in this movie. So yeah, and yeah, like I said, that whole sequence when they're in the subway car, like, is really great. And one of my favorite found footage movies, Troll Hunter, I found I ripped off this movie because the stuff where they're putting the bug guts, like rubbing it all over themselves to kind of like mirror themselves. They do that in the Troll Hunter movie about with the troll stench. Yeah, so they do kind of a similar thing. But I thought all this stuff was a lot of fun, and just kind of the subways underneath just feel like this. I hate to use the word labyrinth because like Pan's Labyrinth, but it kind of feels like a labyrinth. They're going deeper and deeper into these subway tunnels and kind of can't really figure their way out, and they get turned around, and it feels so claustrophobic at the same time. You're like in these sewers and things. But yeah, I just really dug like the atmosphere and just a lot of things about this movie. I think like he directs the shit out of this movie for like a horror movie. And I haven't seen the theatrical cut. All I've ever seen is the director's cut because it's on my Blu-ray, and there's no option to watch a different cut. So I don't know how it was in theaters, or as far as like initially on DVD or whatever before they made the director's cut available. I know he's got a little intro on the Blu-ray that talks about, that this one's definitely more of his vision, and they added in a lot more stuff that he had shot and things like that. And I was glad he was able to do that. That's cool. But yeah, like I really think this has Del Toro written all over it, and the fact that it's his one true like horror movie, I really, really like it. So I'm going to be going back to Mimic a lot. Yeah, I hadn't seen it in a while, and I'm glad I did.
Like I said, this is just one of those where it's like, since I've only seen it the 2 times, and like both within the last year, like it's actually been a little over a year. It was like a year. I think it was like a year to the date when I rewatched it, just because it just popped up on my memories or like whatever. I was like, oh, it's been a year since I watched this. I want to revisit it anyway. So much I loved it. So I've only seen it twice within technically a year span, but I can see it growing, especially the more and more I become a horror fan. It could just be one of my movies where I just ironically a date movie where it's just because it sets that creepy vibe. And like, oh, I don't want
yeah.
Oh yeah, then
no, you can see a lot like watching this movie, just being like, "Oh, this is creepy. I don't like this." Grabbing the arm. This is dirty. This is gross. Ooh, I don't like that. It's gross.
Exactly.
Look at the slime. Look at the guts.
And like you said, like the kills. Those are some of the best parts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just,
it's
that's where Del Toro shines. It's not afraid to like, be in your face with its brutality and that monster. It's not like in terms of unique as a whole, but the way they utilize it in this film, it definitely, hits that. So I'm happy that I've seen it, and I can't wait to just continue to have it grow on me. But my number 2, the last of my 4 stars, Hellboy 2. This is a movie that just it combines everything that you have from the first one, even though you disagree, with just continuing to grow the world.
I feel like you think I don't hate the Hellboy movies. I think they're okay. like they were all right. I had a perfectly fine time rewatching them. I just think they're not everything they could be. That's all. Like I think they're all right. Like again, people misunderstand. It's either like an all or nothing, like 0 or 10. You know what I mean? Like it's a 3 out of 5. It's fine. I liked it. It's entertaining.
It's okay. It builds up this world like the black market stuff. That's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Troll, and it's the little quirk of like the bird like scares like, oh, what is that? And it's like, no way that, first of all, they're like, oh, this little old lady, quit picking on it. And then you like put the goggles on or whatever.
Oh, this movie is so steampunk. Like he goes full on steampunk in this movie because those goggles are full steampunk. There's steampunk, like there's gears everywhere in this movie, and like wheels and all kinds of like steampunky stuff all over this movie. Like he definitely leans in on that one for this one. That's for sure.
And like you have everything that's going on with Seth MacFarlane, who voiced
which I had forgotten about, and he's doing the voice of the German fish in this movie that he does on American Dad. Essentially,
it's a lot of fun. You know what I mean? Like because it's there's the one scene where like he like kills him, and then like. He didn't really because he's just he's a smoke, he's a concept, and then Hellboy like, oh no, you can't do that, blah blah blah, and then it's just a lot of fun, like the way that they're able to. I feel like what's his name, Klaus.
Yeah, Kraus. Yeah, it's like Kraus.
Yeah, something like that. So I like him obviously is way better than Myers in the first one. So that's why like that definitely stands out head to toe. But I really love Prince Nuada, like the prince and the princess dynamic, because obviously you have the love stuff with Abe Sapien and the princess, and you have the drunk scene where they just get drunk. It's the music about you. It's just one of those where it really just like, I don't know. It's just got all the stuff that you want, and like literally, Oh, and then the main scene, like with the tree monster, when he's like, he's like, go get it, and he's like, look at it, that's the last of its kind. It's gonna be extinct, and it's kind of like a
Mhm.
parallel of like what Hellboy is, and it's like, you're really gonna do that, and it really like fight. That's why I said like whenever you have like a villain who like believes what they're doing, like obviously Prince Nuada is like, he's a dick, but like he genuinely believes that he deserves to be king. With the three
Mhm.
parts of the crown, everything going on with the backstory. Like you said, it felt like Lord of the Rings, like, but I really love that because the way they utilize this, it's like a
Well,
fairy tale.
and I don't know if you noticed, but just budgetary reasons, they had to do like kind of the little
The
string
puppeteering
puppet
stuff,
things,
yeah,
yeah, that kind of stuff. They wanted to do something big, like the opening of the first Lord of the Rings movie, where it shows all the orcs fighting and everything, like something big, like that was, a big CGI thing or something. They just literally didn't have the budget, so they had to come
and I
up
actually really
with the
like that.
creative
Like I
thing.
love the puppet,
Yeah,
the
I like the
string
design of it.
paper,
Yeah, it's cool.
because it reminds you of like when you watch like the Babadook, a few years later, how it kind of has like
Oh,
that
right.
children's book, and especially because it is a children's story, like it's it's the dad telling Hellboy that story, and it does a good job of like, let me do some exposition, but like clearly it was during just this one day in his life where obviously that's
Mhm.
going to come up. So it's exposition, but like within the narrative, it makes a lot of sense why you're just telling the audience. You know what I mean? So it just does a good job of like making sense. And like I said, like just the relationship between all of them, and obviously later in the third act when you actually have the title the Golden Army, and just the
Mhm.
action, like you said, you disagree with the action, but I just think it's a lot of fun flipping around and the clanging, the shininess, the gold, and just the way that they're able to like battle and stuff. I just think it's epic. The color schemes is real beautiful, like with the gold, the red, the oranges. Like it just
Mhm.
does a really good job of just like feeling that. And obviously when Red gets stabbed, you have him and Liz. She's pregnant. So you have that whole like storyline going on. There's just so much going on in this story that just like makes it really piss you off that there's not a third one. You know what I mean? Based from
No,
this.
and I even though I'm kind of lukewarm on the movies. I fully supported when I heard rumblings of there was going to be this new Hellboy. I wanted Del Toro to be able to complete his trilogy because he's clearly setting up for a third one in this movie, and I was all for it. Like man, let the man have his vision and do his third movie and complete his complete his story and complete those arcs. You know what I mean? Like I'm all for it. And even if they were somehow able to do it, which I don't think is going to happen, just Perlman's just he's getting too old at this point to don the makeup again. But yeah, like. I'm all for it, man. If they were somehow able to get Hellboy 3 off the ground, man, I'll be there opening weekend. I'll watch it. You know what I mean? Like
Like I
I'm
think
there.
when you're putting the makeup, like he can look however he looks. It's just a matter of what he can do physically. If he can
Right. Yeah.
physically
Yeah.
embody at least enough of the character that like you're
Mhm.
able. Obviously, you have to write the script to make it work. But like if he's able to like move around at least a little bit, because he's also a big dude. Like he's
Oh
not
yeah.
a small
Oh
guy. He's
yeah.
a big dude. So like his body, his joints and stuff are not going to be as nimble as like they maybe once were when he's playing basketball with Ellen Ripley. No, I'm just kidding. Love bringing that up
Harlem
now that I've seen that.
Globetrotters a little bit. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, Hellboy 2 is one of those where it's just like I honestly don't know why it's not my top 100. It's just I wanted to so much. I got to imagine it's going to eventually just out of just I need necessity where it's like, all right, at this point I've just watched it enough times that like it's just I've watched it more than others. It's just
Hmm.
gonna go on there, and it's one of those where it's like, all right, because I have nothing negative to say about this movie. It's just missing something in terms of top 100
Hmm.
versus where my number one obviously we'll talk about that. So that is
Yeah.
my number two. And now we're at each other's number ones. I think
Hmm.
we'll start off with my number one just because I feel
Yeah,
like
you
my
go ahead because I know what yours is. I mean, I knew what yours is going to be coming in because obviously Pan's Labyrinth's in your top 100. So, and I
yeah.
know you love this movie a lot, and I knew that coming in. So that's why I definitely wanted to like go in an open mind in my rewatch plans. Like I hadn't seen it in like 10 years, so I'm glad I rewatched it, especially on the 4K. It looked great. But yeah, like please, no, tell me what you love about this movie. Again, I like the movie a lot. I'm not dissing it at all. Like I think it's a really good movie. But yeah, tell me why it's like top 100 material and why you love it.
So
Yeah.
everything that I love about this movie is it combines the combination of a little girl and her imagination and just kind of like a lot of the narratives that Del Toro has is
Mhm.
like the misfit, the outcast. You know, her mom's is like, why do you want all these books, these fairy tales? Like live in the real world. And it's like yeah, guess what? The real world sucks right now. I want to like be in my own world. And it
Hmm.
reminds me of like everything that, ever since I started watching films, like everything that's been going on in the real world sucks. Like let's
Hmm.
not talk, let's not watch the news. Let's watch movies. And it's the same concept. Like her like, let me not deal with the Spanish Civil War. Let me read these fairy tales. So it does a nice job of hinting at it might be real, it might be not, because it's a fairy tale. You know what I mean? It might be on her head, it might be just her justification of doing all this stuff. Because if you really think about everything that she's doing, she's the only one witnessing it. So it's like it could be on her head, it could just be imagination. So or it really is, and she is really a queen from ages ago, and or a princess from ages ago, and it's her destiny to like get back to her rightful spot. And it just the way it just combines the stories of the fairy tale as well as the real life Civil War. Like I've been saying this for years, Capitan Vidal is one of my top 5 favorite villains of all time, because he just is.
He's really scary and great. Like and again, he's not. You can tell there's something in there where he doesn't want to be as bad as he is at some points. Like he definitely wants to be a stepfather, at some points. Like he's still trying to be a good parent, but like that bad side of him just comes out when the that war, like military aspect, comes out of him. But yeah, he's like he's definitely like the performance is great. Like he was really good. Again, I was just more interested in the other stuff, but like he kept my attention. Like anytime he was on screen, he felt like Hans Landa. Like he felt like Christoph
Yeah,
Waltz a little bit. You know what I mean? Like in a Spanish version of that. Like a little bit.
yeah. So the combination of that, and like my favorite scene is the scene with, I can't remember the character's name right now, but the one who stutters, and it's like, hey, if you can
Mm.
just count to 3, then I'll let you
Oh
go.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
2.
Two.
You know what I mean? And it's like
Three.
you're
Yeah, and it's like,
on edge,
oh, sorry.
and it's fucking scary. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh my god, dude. And like it's one of those scenes where it's like he might have actually let him go because of just how much he knew he wasn't gonna be able to do it. So if in the 1% chance he would have been like,
Well, and he even does that thing where he's like, "Oh, ask my first officer, ask these other guys. If I say, something will happen, it happens, right? So if you can do it, I'll let you go. You know what I mean? Like I'm a man of my word,
and
sort
then
of
the
a thing.
very
But
first
yeah,
time you see him do something
yeah,
crazy, it's when the father and son, they get in trouble for stealing the rabbits, and they're like, you
hmm
didn't search his bag. And then he kills the father just out of principle. He's like, well, you still have to teach them a lesson. It's one of those like, Jesus
yeah,
Christ, dude. Like, and he's like, you wasted my time, but he still does what. And so it's one of those where it's like
hmm
he's just a of principle type of guy, where it's just despicable. But honestly, at the end of the day, I'm not justifying it, but like to be a leader, to be a captain, especially during this time, you have to
yeah,
be that type of personality. So like, you give him credit where it's like he commits to like his
hmm
mindset and like what he's doing, but he also, and then one of my other like subtle scenes where it's like Ophelia, she goes to like shake his hand with his left hand. He's like, no, the other hand, Otros Manos, where it's like, it's like, and there's
yeah.
something about it that is like, it's always being in control, but it's also like he wants everything to be exactly the way it should be. You know what I mean? It's like, if there's something, I don't know, there's something about that scene where it's like, it just always stood out to me. It's like, no, your other hand. It's like, I know that was like
You know,
there for a
you,
reason.
you know what the scariest line was for me was going back to it was when he's talking to the handmaiden or whatever her name,
Carmen.
the one that
Yeah.
kind of tends to everything, yeah, and he goes, oh, you should go down and get the whatever, and she goes, shouldn't you have asked me for the key, so don't you need the
Yeah.
key? Like that felt like like when I talk about the Hans Landa stuff, in the opening where he's eventually
So,
just like, you're hiding the Jews from me, and I know you are, like
yeah.
he knows what's up, like he's not stupid, like, but that was scary where he's just like, oh, shouldn't you have asked me for the key that you need to open the
Yep.
door, that sort of thing. It's just like, oh my god, like that dude is, yeah, he's pretty
Yeah, and
sadistic
then
at that
the
point.
last thing I want to say, like everything that goes on, like the final like climactic battle, like the actual like
Hmm.
war scene, where like in the woods and stuff, like it's I feel like,
Yeah.
well, God, it feels like watching this and like the opening of the Revenant, like back to back, like within the woods,
Mm.
like the two wood scenes, like the difference between the natural lighting there and then like the dark lighting in this one, where it just, I don't know, it's
Mm.
beautiful to look at. I really do feel like he did a good job of like shooting this scene of like both giving everyone room to like see, but also having the camera at a certain angle, like whenever you did something shocking, like kind of turning somewhere, someone's there, and it kind of freaks you out.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it did a good job of doing all that. So it's one of those where it's like obviously all the creature stuff that's fantastic. That's why I kind of let you cover that. But like the real world stuff, that's why I've always connected this one,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, when you have the finale of what happens is in the real world, and I feel like that is the
Mhm.
culmination of what this story is, because that's who you're battling. Because whether this is real life or not, the fairy tale aspect, you still need to get out of the real world. You still need to deal with the real world struggles. Like one of the sub missions she was on had was to help the mom was the root inside the milk underneath the bed, and
Oh,
started
right,
to
right.
think, in order for her to do that, she had to like go into the real world and deal with Capitan, like seeing her, and then the smell, and then everything with the mom crying, and then the baby being born, and all that stuff. Like there's a combination of obstacles and
Mhm.
obviously the very first obstacle with the frog in the tree, like she gets her dress dirty, and like that gets her in trouble. You know what I mean? It's just like there's elements where it combines the real world stuff with the fairy tale stuff, and it's like is she just being a kid and just being silly and having
Or when
imagination?
they burn the root and then she has the miscarriage or
Yeah,
whatever,
you know what I
like
mean?
the all the bloody
Or
everything
yeah,
stuff
the
everywhere, like
early
right
the early
afterwards.
birth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then the talking about practical effects when he gets his lip cut, you know what I mean, and
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
hanging,
Mhm.
brutal. Like that is
Mhm.
a scene where it's like that is a look. Like
Yeah, yeah.
the Joker's like, you want to know how I got these scars? Like,
Capitan's like, you want to know how I got these scars? Yeah, no.
and
Uh,
yeah, and then finally when he gets his comeuppance, like it's just so
oh,
satisfying. You know
sure.
what I mean? It's
Mhm.
just it's that's I feel like that's how you show a revolution, kind of like in Star Wars, the rebel, the Rebel Alliance. It's
Mhm.
that you're rooting for them. You know what I mean? So I feel like you need that real world stuff, because like at the end of the day, this is a real world story that just has a fantasy undertone because of what may or may not be reality, and I love that about it, because it opens the door for both perspectives to think both ways, whether it's full imagination or it is full fairy tale. And I love that by the end, she is in her place, but like, is it real, or is that just her accepting fate as she's dying? You know what I mean? It's her,
Yeah.
and then the lullaby, na 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 na, like it's one of the things where it's just always in my head, and I just love it so much. So yeah, this is just a movie that's been special to me. It's a coincidence that being of Spanish culture, that it's like it I,
Yeah.
I I don't even feel it for that. I just feel like that just adds to it. Like it's not. I don't feel like I love this movie obligatory because of me being a Sanchez and this being like a Spanish movie. It's just it adds to it where it's like, all right, I can understand why things are going. And I just connect to it just a little more. But everything else aside from that, just because everything else is
Yeah.
the fairy tale stuff, that family dynamic, that's all universal. It's regardless of culture. You know what I mean? So this movie's one that's always been up there, and it's never going to be outside my top 20. It's been in my top 10 for the most part, and then I dropped out just as I was doing. I was like, I'm going to put my fun crime movies in there first, and then next
Yeah,
year I'll
yeah.
probably jump back into my top 10. It's just one of those where it's like it's always going to be up there. It's just a matter of where it ranks. So yeah, number one,
Yeah.
Del Toro for me, and a top tier movie for me, and it always
Oh,
has.
yeah, yeah.
But going into your number one,
Yeah, well, if you haven't figured it out already, it's the movie that scratches a lot of my itches, specific rim. So, and like I alluded to, I'm a massive Godzilla fan, kaiju fan, MonsterVerse kind of stuff. I grew up on Power Rangers, so I love like Dinozords and Voltron and all that kind of shit too. And this movie just kind of scratches a lot of those itches for me. When I heard that Del Toro was going to make a movie basically about Godzilla monsters and us and big, robots fighting them, like I was in, man, and I've been on board with this movie since the first time I saw it in IMAX. I really dug it. I like the look of the movie. I like the kind of darker stuff because I think it does make the colors pop a little bit more. I was watching my 4K and like it just looks great. Like I think that it makes the Jaegers like look so much cooler when they're like roaming around. I just like the design of
okay.
that. I like the conception, just the world he sets up here. That it's something we've been dealing with for a couple of years. Like it just kind of came out of nowhere, and I like the world building of how everybody, it's such a typical human thing, Henry, about how like we don't really come together as the world until something crazy happens to all of us. Like we until after the fact. We're never proactive, it's always reactive. So it's like all these monsters start popping up, so now we start doing something about it, instead of like being prepared for something. Is such a typical human thing. But how everybody kind of had to come together to build these things, and the technology had to catch up. It's a lot like World War II, actually, like how we were behind in technology and we kind of had to catch up, to the Germans to kind of put up a fight. So it's kind of very similar to that. And I just like the world they build up here, and how we've been dealing with it. And every time one pops up, it's like kaiju alert, level 4, like all that stuff is. I just dig all that stuff, like all the world building of this one works for me. And I love the looks of the Jaegers and the looks of the kaiju, how they're kind of Godzilla style, but they all kind of look different. I think the performances are good. I like Charlie Hunnam in this movie, like you said. I think he's actually really good. Idris Elba obviously is good. I like the story with him losing his brother in that initial battle, and kind of not going back to it and being hesitant to come back to the Jaeger program. And it's I think the comedy works. I think
worker, technically, when we first meet him or whatever.
Yeah, right. And they're building that wall, which we know is a stupid idea in the first place. And we're with them that it's just dumb, like to build these walls that these guys can obviously knock down. But
we would never build a wall.
Oh, never ever. And we would never. Well, we just don't finish it. It's like the movie. We just don't finish it. We like half build it. We don't go all in on it. But yeah, like I like all the stuff with Charlie Day. I think him and the chemistry with his partner is actually a lot of fun. All that stuff. Every time he says, the other dude says the kaiju, like the way he says it just makes me laugh. But yeah, like I dig all that stuff. Stuff with Ron Perlman is like this black market, dealing body parts of the kaiju monsters, like the powders and the tox, the little trinkets, and all that stuff is a lot of fun.
So are you all in on Charlie Day's character? I guess that's one where.
I'm in on it. I like it. I like Charlie Day's character. Again, him and the chemistry with his buddy.
Criticism, they're either like that's the worst character ever, or it's just.
I feel like it's also people who don't watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia as well, so I'm all in on Charlie Day anyways. So like I'm fine with it, and I think he's basically just doing his Always Sunny in Philadelphia character, just as a scientist. So I'm all in with it. I like him. He works for me. So I think it's a good contrast because Charlie Hunnam's so kind of humorless for the most part in the movie that you kind of need those moments of levity.
Not even in a negative way, like you get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, you get it. It's just like that's not his character. So yeah, I mean, but I like the look of the movie. I think the action scenes are fun, dude. When I was in the theater and like they're having that battle up in the sky and dude whips out the sword and it like chops the monster in half, like my audience went nuts and I went nuts too. Like that's such a Power Rangers thing of like power sword, like all that shit. I just love that stuff, man. Like I even like the concept of them being underwater for the finale, like kind of plugging up the portal or whatever, to the thing. Like I like all that stuff. So I don't know, what can I say? I think this movie's stupid entertaining. Like it's awesome. Like it works for me in all of his concepts. So and it's easily the one film of his that I've rewatched a lot, and I just have kind of dug from the beginning. So what can I say? I'm one of the guys who likes Pacific Rim, and I just dig it a lot. So
yeah, I'm not mad. I'm not mad at you for it. I'm just mad at myself that I don't love it like I should, even if it's
it's fine.
The dumb 90s.
I just don't think it's fair when people just call it like a garbage. I don't think it's a garbage movie like at all. Like there's people who like think it's like a horrible movie. It's like this is not a horrible movie. You have not seen a horrible movie. You have not seen some of the Godzilla sequels that I have seen. Like those are horrible movies. Like go watch Godzilla versus the Smog Monster and tell me this is a terrible movie. Okay, go watch Son of Godzilla and tell me this is a terrible movie. All right, stop it. Go watch King Kong Escapes, King Kong versus Robot King Kong, and King Kong and tell me this is a bad movie. Like stop it. Like you don't know what a bad movie is. So Pacific Rim is like Oscar-winning material compared to that. So
at least in visuals to some people.
Yeah.
So that was our Del Toro. So this one was very, 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 very,
very different.
Less to do a combination for. So
was it our most different one so far? I feel like even our Tarantino was a little wonky, but we kind of met in the middle a lot. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like this might be the most
I'm just looking at
different.
this
Yeah.
top 11. I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. But
Yeah.
here we go. Number 11 is the only one that does make sense. Kronos.
Chronos. Yeah.
Number 10. This one hurts my heart, and I'm happy. And I bet you're mad it's this high. Crimson Peak.
It's fine.
Number 9, The Devil's Backbone. Number 8 for Guillermo del Toro, Nightmare Alley. Number 7, Hellboy. Number 6, Hellboy 2. Time to get into Austin's feelings a little bit. Number 5, Mimic.
Oh, that's fine. I can, because you have to be a horror fan to like that movie.
Number
to be
4,
fair.
Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
And our top 3 Del Toro movies. Number 3, The Shape of Water. Number 2, Blade 2. And number 1, Pan's Labyrinth. I literally was looking at it, I'm like, that's just how it goes. That's the math. Blade 2 is our number 2. Pan's Labyrinth.
You gave Blade 2 quite the bump for that one. So yeah.
That's that. Yeah. And I was so low on Pacific Rim and medium on Mimic, and it just that's how the math went. Like even Shape of Water, that was technically like mid for both of us, but the weight that brought down Mimic and Pacific Rim, and you bring down Hellboy 2 really knocked out our top 3 like out. So
Oops.
That was our list. Austin. Did we decide if we're doing a list next week, or are we just doing a week off?
I don't know. We were kind of mixed on it. We can either do something small in preparation, or we could take the week off in anticipation of our big giant mega Batman ranking. So
we'll take the week off and just doing a Batman.
Yeah. Because to be fair, that'll give you time, because there's going to be, I think what we said, 15 movies up for grabs, right, on that one. For the Batman ranking, because
I have an
it's
idea.
everything. Yeah. Hit me.
How many episodes have we done so far? 8, 9?
Something like that, yeah.
Let's just do our top 10 movies that we've ranked so far. Let's just pick our favorites, and let's make a list and just talk about those and just do a recap and kind of
our top 10 of our 9 or 10 lists, or 8 of our shows so far.
Yeah, just give us a reason to just stress free. Don't have to rewatch anything. Clearly, just kind of talk about it, and then just
like what's our top favorites of the favorites.
No, just we can order it however we want. Just we go in, look at those lists, and just all right, now let's just pick our 10. It doesn't have to be
I don't know if I saved any of my lists. I gotta go back and watch them all.
Scroll through, at least it's on screen. You can just scroll through and it'll say
I guess, yeah. I'll have to go back and write them all down again.
All mine are still there.
Yeah, I know. I had them all in my note apps, and I think I sometimes delete them after the episode's over, since it's in the books.
If it makes you feel better, you can at least read the topics, and you can just go on the memory of your favorites.
I can remember. Yeah, I can remember my topics and the favorites, but yeah, that's cool.
I feel like that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take next week off a prep. We're just gonna do a little fun one, make it more of a roundtable style. Kind of just talk for an hour, and then in 2 weeks we will be ranking all Batman movies, and that's going to be live action and animated, so from Batman 66 all the way to the new Batman. And we're also going to include Lego Batman, both versions of Justice League. And did we decide if we're going to do Suicide Squad, because we need that one to make it
yeah, I guess so. Why not, to make it even 15? And then like Mask of the Phantasm was theatrical, so that's in there somewhere. All the 80s and 90s stuff. And everything, the Nolan stuff, everything in between. So yeah, everything's up for grabs, which could be, again, you throw all those together, that could be interesting. And it all depends also in how this new one. Yeah, we're gonna do a recap show, a clip show, like how Seinfeld would do or something. Yeah, just a little recap.
I'm excited about this Batman one, because you got to think about our ages are really going to show with these rankings. I'm really curious to see how it.
You might be surprised at like my top 3 for this one. Honestly, like I've kind of started making my rough draft list, which I'm gonna rewatch. I don't need to rewatch a ton, maybe 2 or 3 movies here and there. You know what I mean? I'm pretty solid.
Rewatch just because I want to. I don't need to. My ranking is pretty, like, I already have a list. My ranking is technically fine. The only one I haven't seen is 66. That's going to be the only first time watch. But everything else, like, I'm pretty confident I've seen them all either once or twice, and I know what I because I've either seen them recently for the first time or I've rewatched them enough. But I am just going to do a rewatch just because I'm like, hey, I'm a Batman fan. I just gives me an excuse to watch them, like, because I'm.
Sure.
go to the geek stuff. So I'm like, hey, now I have no shame. I'm just gonna binge Batman for the next 2 weeks.
Wait, you know what? There's worse things you could binge over the next 2 weeks than a bunch of and well, and it's also interesting if you're going to binge them, especially if you binge them in like chronological order, which you might do,
Yeah.
like which might be interesting if you start with Batman 66 and go to 89 and Batman Returns, all that stuff. To watch them in order and see how Batman progresses over the years and the phases that it goes through theatrically, like it's pretty interesting, like to go through to see how they start like comedically and then go dark and go back to comedic and then go dark again, and kind of up and down, like to see the phases that it goes through.
Old, you know what I mean? It
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah.
See the.
It's
And then
interesting.
obviously we don't know where this next one's gonna go, but it could
Yeah,
be,
no, that's the big wild card is neither one of us have obviously seen it yet, so we have no idea where it's going to rank. We got to save a spot to see where it goes, and yeah, I think we're each. I'm going to try to see it twice before we do it. So I know you were going to try to do the same because I like to have the one viewing just to be a fan and just take it in, and just have fun. And then the second one be more like a critical eye, kind of like really looking at it and checking it out from there. So I've got my ticket. I've already got my ticket for Thursday at 4 p.m. On the March 3rd or whatever it is. So yeah, Thursday at 4 o'clock. I'll be checking out my first showing, and then I'll probably try to see it again on Sunday or Monday.
I have a Wednesday ticket for AMC A-List, so I have a Wednesday.
Ooh.
I'll do an early show that recap, and it'll definitely be an early one. Or worst case scenario, we just don't do it because I'm going to go see Batman and work.
Hey, if it cancels because we're prepping and we're seeing Batman movies, that's fine. So we'll see. We may have a show, we may not. If we do, it'll be more of just a reflection recap, kind of what we've done so far. Yeah, like Steven said, kind of a clip show. Yeah, a clip show, recap show. Just talk about what we've talked about, and we'll talk about kind of all the different preferences and all the different lists we've had so far, and how different some of them have been, and how similar some of them.
Tarantino, Nolan heavy? Is it going to be?
I don't know.
Rambo, Rocky, and
Rocky.
Alien Predator heavy. Like you never know. Like that definitely is curious because honestly, there might be something on the list that doesn't even get mentioned because there's you have Eyes of the World.
Does Saw 6 make the list? Maybe. Maybe. Does it squeak in at a number 10? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I like that movie a lot.
Yeah. So with that said, make sure you check out everything that Austin does over on the Movie Hero Network because he's got his shows, tier ranker fights, tournament fights, and the Frenzy show where talk about his top 10 foods or top 12 foods.
Yeah, we did one last night. It was fun. It's a 3-on-3 thing, just top 12 friends, and we just yell out answers and try to get these 12s. And we've had different hosts every time, which is fun. Jordan Owens hosted last night, so coming up with his own list, and I've hosted one, and we have a lot of fun over there with some of those shows. So yeah, and this show's a lot of fun too. I look forward to this every week. It's one of my highlights, and yeah, you got a lot of trivia going on too over on your channel, and you got a lot going on too.
So make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you subscribe to Hip's channel. Make sure you put on the notifications because the time's not always to be exact. It's late, might be a couple early, so make sure you get the notifications so you know exactly when you pop up. You don't want to show up to this episode and be like, oh man, number 1. What was the other ones? What did I miss? So my name is Henry Confidential. That is Austin Pezhal. See you for sure in 2 weeks. Ranking Batman. Maybe next week. Ranking stuff.
We'll see.
Clip show style. Henry Confidential. We're out, guys.